And in actual fact, this becomes the biggest direct fire gun ever fitted on a tank. And by direct fire, it's not lobbing things over in a distance, point the gun at the target, off it goes. We think we're going to need them for taking on, not the T-54s that we know about, and then later the T-55s, that T-10 tank and whatever the Russians are coming next in their heavy tank programs. So they test this new gun. I say it's new, it's really developed from a howitzer. 183mm, that size of the hole at the end of the barrel. It's going to fire something called a HESH round, high explosive squash head. We've come up with that in Britain towards the end of the war. We like it. It's basically a shell, thin case, full of plastic explosive. It hits the enemy tank, pancakes on the side, detonated a fraction after it's hit, and that sends a shockwave through the enemy's tank's armour. The rounds are so big, how the hell are we going to do it? This is stage 2 we've got here, and they carry on experimenting with this till about the mid-1950s, but then we realise it's redundant because we can do what this tank was going to do with missiles instead, and we also, it's only a while later when we find out the Russians have dropped the idea of heavy tanks, so we don't actually need it, but it's a bit of a peculiar one. This is the turret used to be in our play park for ages, which now dropped, and the Hughes guys have put it back on a Mark III Centurion hull, just as it did in the trials. Mark VI hull used it sometimes as well. But it was what might have helped us take on those bigger future Russian tanks if they were being made. This is what the Americans come up with as a similar answer to that problem. We've got, this is the American M103, this version, the A2, has got better penetration than that 120mm gun. So it makes these bigger tanks redundant. So we put that American 120mm gun, we put it on our...
In World War II up to pretty well the modern era, and it's about the arrival of the main battle tank. I'm not going to attempt to talk over these things, so I'm going to let them go past, then I'll come around and do individual laps. I'll tell you a bit about it.
Main battle tanks, but they're the AMX-13 now as well. The French equivalent. Yeah.
This is the Army's small Swiss Army knife for getting vehicles up to about 30 tonnes out of trouble. What you can see obviously on the back there is the large crane. That crane enables it to lift things up to about 15.5 tonnes, and when used in conjunction with its main winch at the back, capable of putting between 25 to 50 dependent on the configuration.
So, a rather good looking vehicle coming on now. What's this fella?
Absolutely, so this is our craft, the Challenger Armoured Repair and Recovery Vehicle. I describe the SVR as the small Swiss Army knife, this is the big Swiss Army knife. Big upgrade from a 30mm Radar. Not only can we shoot further, but we can have a better effect on more heavily armoured targets with it.
So that idea of he's got that punch with 40mm, which is a pretty major step up from the old 30mm Arden. So this is a vehicle that not only can pack a punch, but kicking the ante, that idea of waking the enemy up, reconnaissance by fighting rather than stealth all the time sometimes. So it's got a presence as well, hasn't it, in terms of fighting, not just picking up what's going on.
Absolutely. Recce by fire, we can now do that as well. However, primarily, what we're going to want it to do is identify targets for this. Chapter 2, OES, Megatron. Megatron, the vehicle I get to work with every week, so-called Megatron because all the trials, bits and pieces that have been added to it over the history, it's transforming all the time. What is it? Ultimately, it's a Challenger 2, dressed up in Barracuda, okay, so that is a multi-spectrum camouflage. Not only does it visually disrupt things, but also helps kill the thermal signature somewhat. Up the top there, you see the bird table. The bird table is the ECM jammer. That suite, more set up for the IED threat, all manner of things there that will stop signal detonated explosives. Pushing forward, can that be adapted to create an anti-drone bubble? More than likely. Down at ATU, so-called Megatron, because of all the trials, all the transformations it's gone through, we thought Megatron was a suitable name. Dressed up this time in a Barracuda and bar armour attire, it's pretty much OES standard with a little bit of TES thrown in. What's there to say? It's the British Army's main battle tank, third generation main battle tank, composite armour, fully automated, fire control system and a stabilised turret. Up on the top there, what you'll see is the bird table as we call it there. That is all ECM based. Again at the front, if you see the two antennas, this is all designed to stop IEDs. It could block out those radio signals for signal detonated ones. For those of you that were misfortunate enough to come and listen to one of my ammo talks earlier, we know it's got the rifle gun. The rifle gun is what makes it British. We've got the rifle gun because we still like firing Hesh.
Why do we like Hesh so much?
Once with my regiment, the Queen's Royal Hussars, and once with the King's Royal Hussars. It proves that though the accuracy is somewhat diminished, it is still an absolutely world-class weapon system.
Now, one of the classic look of a Challenger tank is this slightly faceted surface. And that's because it's got this wonderful top of armour under there. And you don't want to tempt fate, but we really haven't lost one or lost a man through penetration and chop them, have we?
No. To the point where it's still such a top secret, that vehicle cannot be left out overnight anywhere without someone guarding it. Even if it's on a secure military establishment, it's that good. And with Challenger 3, it's only going to get better.
Better level. So he could tell you all about what's in it, but then we'd have to kill you all afterwards. So that's why they're obviously
Open up with the guns.
The bad guys knowing what that level is. So the idea of recovering, you say so. Morale is one thing. We don't want to give the enemy the pleasure of having some of our kit, but also that idea we can get things going again. So this is one of those Swiss Army knife vehicles, isn't it? That's really going to help us do that.
Absolutely. I know we've gone from Swiss Army knife to super specialised. However, this kit ticks every box when it comes to being a key asset. A hugely high value target for the enemy and vital for us to protect. What you see here is the Titan, part of the T2 series of engineering vehicles that include the Trojan. The Titan is there to lay bridges. What you see on the top there, incidentally based on the Challenger 2 hull, but on the top there, you've got the bridge. More specifically, the number 10 bridge. Number 10 bridge capable of spanning 24.5 metres. You will see shortly that coming down. Scissor action is what enabled it to do that. Why do we need this? We need this in order to carry out what we call manoeuvre warfare. Projecting where we want to be, ignoring any form of natural barrier that may be there. Engineer Recce, They will push forward alongside our reconnaissance to ID a suitable bridge crossing space. Once that bridge crossing space is confirmed as being correct, what's going to happen then? Well, firstly, on the home bank, we're going to have challengers, if available, set up in overwatch. They're looking out. They're not looking at the river. They're looking into depth. As soon as we decide to release the Titan, as you can see, this is a very, very, very vulnerable time for it. We're going to send forward a packet of 4 challengers. Challenger 2s are going to sandbag this. We are there to take fire. Okay, we've got to protect this at all costs. As this bridge is going down, behind that line further, we're going to have armoured infantry ready to push forward. They will not be released until this is secure. At this point, Overwatch is still there, keeping an eye out. If anything's happening, they can either call in fires, it'll generally be pre-designated, our recce will have gone out, I need routes that will be suitable for the enemy, so we don't have to work out where it's going to go, it's marked on a map already. Key to this is speed. Once it's going, it can't turn back because we've revealed it. And being such a high value target, we can't afford for it to be putting back with its bridge on. We need to strike fast with it there.
And I imagine in today's, now in this day and age, we can see what I'm flying around at the moment, that idea of the drone, whatever we're doing on the battlefield, someone's going to be seeing it. So within a certain number of minutes, we know the artillery strike's coming in, something's going to happen. So that idea of momentum, keeping it going is important. Or again, can we do this in the dark where fewer of the drones going to see us? All those things we've got to pick up on. And that idea, because manoeuvre means otherwise, if we're stuck the wrong side of the river, you guys can't do your operation successfully.
Absolutely. I mean, sitting duck doesn't quite cut it. That's exactly what we are. We've gathered all our assets, we've committed to this, we need to make it happen. Clearly, similar to air superiority, that's how you want to start thinking about drones. We would not commit this unless we were confident we owned the airspace around it. As we see now, successfully launched the bridge. We wouldn't, as soon as the engineers call this as set, the vehicles are on the move, okay? Because we need to hit that at pace. They're going to start reversing off shortly. What are the tanks going to do? The tanks that are still there are still going to stay in position. They might reposition themselves around the edges, and now the warriors are going to stream forward. The warriors are going to push about 500 metres, a kilometre in advance. They're going to drop their troops off, form a javelin screen. As soon as they're out, challengers from the reserve are pushing forward to make the breakout force, and we're going to go 1, 2 grid squares ahead of that to secure the ground on both sides.
So there it is laid. Now, let's just say you've done that, you've secured that ground. We've got another vehicle that we might be sending out there to see what's going on up ahead. This is
Jackal, more specifically Jackal 2, built as a direct requirement because the Snaps Land Rovers weren't cutting it during the Herrick times. This is designed for deep battlefield reconnaissance and its strike ability. Fast vehicle, yeah, top speed on the road, you can probably get 80 miles an hour out of this. As commonly said, the best armour is no armour. This is not designed to stand up in a firefight, it's designed to find where best to strike. To do that, it can carry the L7 machine gun on the front, and in the gunner's ring you're either going to have a 50 cal or a grenade machine gun. Key feature with the Jackal, its suspension is adjustable, so if you're going over rough ground, you can drive it up to avoid any rocks or getting beached. And if you want it, you find yourself in a nice fire support position, you can drop it right down to provide a stable gun platform.
and I know they did the exercise where they're going all the way across Germany through Poland, and it can really motor as well. So the idea again, if you're doing manoeuvre warfare, you've got to appear somewhere the enemy's not expecting you and at speed, and these have obviously got that capability.
Yeah. One of the drawbacks of armour, much as I would love it, is often it requires a railway to move it. It's got to be on the rail tracks, which again, high targets. This can drive to the place it needs to be and operate there. In terms of operating range and time, a troop of these with a Coyote, which is a Sergeant variant, it's got 6 wheels, they can push out for 10 days at a time without having to refuel because they carry the fuel in jerry cans. Most recently, deployed Op Nukum in Mali, which is a UN peacekeeping mission, and they were pushing out as a long...
So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to park the vehicles up. You'll be able to take your photographs of them from the other side of the wall there. Do ask the crews if you've got the opportunities. These are the guys that are doing it for real. If you want to know what they're up to, what it's like in the modern army, what they think of their crews, ask them that. And also, of course, we've got some of the recruiting stands here. You know, do show the support. And I know Corporal Wright at the moment, single guy, it's his birthday today, he's all lonely, so do talk to him, young ladies, if you happen to be there at the end of all this. So thank you so much for coming along, and please, if you do give a last round of applause. Thank you.
The M5A1. Give them a round of applause. Come on, guys. M24 Chappie. M4A276 Fury. GMC Deuce the Half and the reenactors from History in the Making. There they go. British team. Picking up the rear. M4A1 Sherman. Which has, I suggest to you, every right to call itself tank that won World War II. So people might argue about the plenty of combat experience. Although to be honest, a good number are likely to be replacements given the casualties that the 29th have suffered. They're backed up by some light armour, an American M5 tank and a British badged M24 Chappie. Now, we know these guys here from the 7th Armoured Div. The 7th Armoured Div was about the only British regiment to use the Chappie as a reconnaissance vehicle. So it looks as if a reconnaissance unit has teamed up with this American convoy probing eastwards from the... My goodness! There's an attack there. Right, the anti-tank gun has spotted them. And now the Americans are deploying to deal with that anti-tank gun. As you can see, American infantry have debussed from the Deuce to Half, the GMC truck. They're advancing towards the German emplacement. Now the Germans here are outnumbered. It's a small forward emplacement. They're going to hold a unit. Their job is not necessarily to defeat the incoming Allied convoy, but to hold them long enough for reinforcements to come in and flank them. Now, although they've got anti-tank gun, they are at a disadvantage because here the light tanks can bring mobile flank out. As you can see there, they're opening fire there on the position to dominate the position, to force really the German troops out of that dugout. There is a lot of fire going down. If you notice, when you see the bit more closely, you'll notice that the American troops are tending to use automatic weapons or semi-automatic rifles. The Germans are largely using bolt-action rifles. They don't have access to that kind of ammunition support that the Allies have got. Having said that, Hitler is very aware that the Allies are still bringing in their supplies from the beaches of Normandy and latterly from Antwerp. So they're not completely... right, now then. The Americans have marked the position, they're storming it, and the Germans, a little bit later, the Germans are withdrawing. Now, at this stage of the war, the Germans were calling on just about anybody to form what were known as Kampfgruppe, battle groups, largely ad hoc formations. Some of them may have been Panzer Grenadiers, some may have been Waffen-SS, some may have been Luftwaffe police, anti-aircraft batteries deploying their 88s as anti-tank guns. Some may even be Hitler Youth. It's a mixed group, but they're fighting on now. Many of the Allies at this stage, realising the war was going to be ending soon, became increasingly resentful. Read the veterans' accounts, becoming increasingly resentful about the fact that people are still dying. Why don't the Germans just give up? They know they're going to lose. Many, many reasons. Some of the young Germans here have been inculcated with the spirit of Nazism. As members of the Hitler Youth have been inducted straight into things like the Waffen-SS. Others may be clinging to this idea that Hitler has, that if they can make the Allies pay in enough blood for every metre of the fatherland they seize, then perhaps the Western Allies will go to the negotiating table, and Hitler's dream is that the Western Allies will join up with what's left of the Wehrmacht to drive the Soviet troops out of Eastern Germany. Some may simply be afraid not to fight because they've seen the bodies hanging from telegraph poles with the notices around their necks, "This coward refused to fight for the fatherland." There are SS death squads, discipline squads, if you like, roaming behind the lines. Now, these young Germans here have done their job. They've held the Americans long enough for reinforcements to turn up. And we can see here, so again, it's a mixed group of reinforcements. This is not a Panzer division. This is the sort of firepower of the Kampfgruppe. In front, we have SDKFZ 222, a light armoured car, did great service in the Western Desert with Rommel, armed with a 20mm cannon. It's getting a bit elderly looking by this stage. They're pleased to see the big fella in the middle. To the rear, we have a Hanomag half-track 251 personnel carrier, but in the middle, of course, they've got their trump card, this Kampfgruppe. They've got a King Tiger, a Tiger II. And yeah, you can see that's a fairly intimidating bit of kit. Now, the Tiger II was issued to elite forces only, so the chances are then that the young men manning that Tiger II are again probably Waffen-SS, because one of the Waffen-SS Panzer units split up from their fellows, acting as the fire support for this particular Kampfgruppe. In the rear, the half-track, well, I'm now pretty sure that these German troops the foot soldiers are Panzer Grenadiers, because only the Panzer Grenadiers had access to this kind of armoured support, this kind of armoured transport. The average Wehrmacht soldier would go to war on his own 2 feet and be supplied from horse-drawn wagons. And the Hanomag is mounting a couple of heavy machine guns. An MG-34 and MG-42. Each one of those capable of laying down somewhere in the region of 1,200 pounds a minute. Quite capable of dominating a battlefield. The problem is, if you're firing 1,200 rounds a minute, you're going to get through your ammunition very quickly. And it's not guaranteed that you'll get the full resupply. Now, Big Tiger is taking up a tactical position here to cover the potential approach of the Amis, the Americans. Not a Maxim gun, I had a Maxim. Find them, fix them, flank them, finish them. find them, well they've done that, or rather they've blundered into them, fix them, that's what they're trying to do now. There they are, the Germans are withdrawing to a village nearby. Even the firepower from those heavy machine guns on 251 didn't help there. The Germans have withdrawn to a village nearby. The next thing they need to do is to flank that position and then just to finish it off and roll it up. But with that King Tiger there, it's questionable whether infantry, like these guys here, are going to be, no, they've got a heavy mortar position. That's it, keep that fire going guys, keep their heads down. There we are, we do in fact have a Russian heavy machine gun firing from the village there. The 29th attacking through the smoke, flanking the village. Right, 251 take the hit. At the moment, the Tiger is not exerting the sort of force we would have expected. The dominant weapon on the battlefield at the moment is that heavy mortar that the 29th are deploying against the dug-in Germans. Is burning. Right, now. The obvious thing to do at this point, get on the radio, whistle up the support of your own, and it looks as if cavalry has just arrived. 2 Sherman tanks, an M4A1 and M4A2, M4A276. Now, the slightly older design, the M4A1, is not going to be able to cope with the King Tiger by itself. The 75mm on that Sherman is not capable of penetrating virtually any of the armour on the King Tiger, but the high velocity 76 on the A2 is capable. So now the dynamic is shifting a little bit. The mortar's still putting down rounds to dominate our village. Oh, there we go. It's also, we've got smoke rounds put down. This is to mark the position of the American infantry. If there are any Allied aircraft in the air, you don't want them bombing the American position, so they're marking their front line with coloured smoke. 2v2. Deciding discretion the better part of valour. And then there's a white flag in the village. There's a white flag. The Germans have surrendered. Now remember,
French, German.
some of these German troops, some of these Panzer Grenadiers might be 16 or 17 years old. They might never have been in combat before. They've just gone through a terrifying, gut-wrenching experience. Some of them have been told they'll be shot by the Americans if they surrender. Others have decided that surrender is the only obvious thing to do. There goes the Jeep with the 30 caliber mounted. Try and put yourself in the mind of one of these young Americans from Wisconsin, Arkansas, never been out of his state before, let alone overseas, thrust into this visceral battle for a continent. Put yourself in the mind of the young Germans. They've been shielded to an extent
doesn't do anything
from what the Nazi regime has done.
Yeah,
but they know.
understandable though.
They know.
No, but
that
it
these
would be nice
Americans,
if they simulated
they
a fight
recognise
between the Fury and the Tiger.
Flashes, they know that they will have
Could always have an
landed in Omaha,
explosion.
they'd have been struggling across the
Oh, there we go.
got now, firing on the King Tiger. It's been bracketed. And again, remember the crew in there, they may only be young teenagers. These are not necessarily hardened panzer men. They all gone on the Eastern Front or somewhere else. These could be guys who've done a couple of weeks training in a much smaller vehicle and then been put into, it's like learning to drive in a mini car and being put into a 40-ton Arctic or semi, if you will, one of our American friends. It's difficult, right? So they may have not been up to the task that they've been given. In fact, our version of the King Tiger, so-called Hensel-turreted one in the main museum, that was lost not to any action, but to the very fact that the crew basically broke it because they were inexperienced, shredded the gearbox, and had to abandon it. So that's why it's sitting relatively intact in the museum. Now it seems that wise counsels have prevailed. The Germans have been taken into custody. Having been relieved, I suspect, of things like watches, cameras, and whatever. And also any documentation which might be useful to command any intelligence use. Now the German vehicles are going to leave the field. Pretty obviously, we're not allowed to destroy a King Tiger. So you're going to need to imagine that that is a smoking wreck in the middle of the battlefield. You can see now the GIs from the 29th mounting the GMC lorry. As a matter of interest, while they're getting on board, just to point out, that lorry is the basis of the famous duck, the amphibian. Basically, it is that lorry in a boat-shaped hull. And as you know, ducks are still in use around the world today, mostly as tourist attractions. The Americans produced, thank you. The Americans produced 500,000 GMC trucks, second only to the Jeep in terms of numbers, and that shows you the power, the economic power. We've mentioned it a couple of times already today. The economic power of the United States, the ability to provide equipment. And now we can see, in tribute to the fact that it is Victory in Europe year this year, we've got the flags flying from the GMC, the Deuce and a Half. And as the Germans leave the field, we're going to get a look at the American convoy flying the flag, and Canadian convoy as well. I noticed that yesterday. We have at least one Canuck on there.